This week on Word from Jerusalem.
Welcome to Word from Jerusalem, and welcome to the beautiful coast of Israel. We're here today in the ancient port city of Jaffa, which of course was made famous in the story of Jonah the prophet, when he came and set sail from here while he was running from the presence of the Lord. Then in the New Testament, we have the story of the Apostle Peter, who had his famous vision at the house of Simon the tanner here, that it was okay to sit down and eat with the Gentiles. Now today, one of the best things about this historic city is its commanding view of its next door neighbor, the city of Tel Aviv. And what's remarkable to consider is that 100 years ago, this was all still barren sand dunes. There was nothing here. So what the Jewish people have been able to do as they've come back to the land and how they've built it up is truly amazing. But what's even more amazing is that the Jewish people are the only people in all the world who have been violently uprooted from their homeland, not once but twice in history, and have been able to come back and reconstitute their nation back in their own homeland. You can look all over the world and not find another people who have done it twice. You can't even find someone who's done it once. So this makes them an unusual people in all the earth. But what's even more remarkable is that they have a book that tells you this is going to happen before it ever does. We call it the Bible. It actually says there would not be one but two exiles of the Jewish people and two returns back here to the land. For instance, Isaiah 11:11, God says, I will set my hand a second time to regather the remnant of my people from all over the world where I've scattered them. In other words, the first exile and return was just from Babylon. The second exile and return is from all over the world. Isaiah 45 and other passages also speak of the Jews coming home from the north, the south, the east, and the west, and from all corners of the earth, a worldwide ingathering of the Jewish people in the last days. In Jeremiah 31, it says, among these outcasts coming home to Zion, there will be the lame and the halt, and women with children. And we have the famous story of Operation Solomon in May 1991, when Israel sent 34 planes down to Ethiopia and rescued and brought home in an emergency airlift 15,000 Ethiopian Jews in one weekend. And on those planes, there were 5 mothers who gave birth to children as they were flying here, just as the prophets foretold. Now, the context of Isaiah 60 is the last days ingathering of the Jewish people to their homeland and the way it serves as a prelude to the coming of the Messianic kingdom. For instance, in verse 4 of Isaiah 60, it says, lift up your eyes and see. They gather together, they come to you. Your son shall come from afar, and your daughter shall be nursed at your side. And then at verse 9, it says, the ships of Tarshish shall come first. It says the Jewish return would begin mainly by ships. The term ships of Tarshish is a reference to the ancient Phoenicians, who were considered a great seafaring people. They built large ships that could ply the entire Mediterranean all the way over to a port they helped build in the southern part of Spain called Tarshish. And this served as a gateway out through the Straits of Gibraltar into the Atlantic Ocean itself. So a ship of Tarshish is a ship that can ply the open oceans. And it's incredible that in the first 120 years or so of the Jewish return in modern times, scholars date it back to around 1880s. The first 60 years or so of this ingathering, most of the Jews coming back came by large ships. And they first started coming here to the port of Jaffa. It was still an operational port for large vessels then. It takes in smaller commercial fishing vessels and little pleasure craft now, but it was still able to handle larger ships back then. And they set up an office here to register all the Jews who were coming back to the land. A few decades later, when the British were ruling the land under the mandate system, they developed a port up the coast in Haifa. This was able to handle larger vessels, and so Jews continued to return to the land of Israel from all over the world by boat. But this began to trouble the local Arab population. They started agitating against the Jewish return. And in response, the British imposed a strict quota on the number of Jews who could enter the land of Palestine each year. And so they began piling onto ships and trying to make it to the coast. The British then imposed a naval blockade and began stopping these ships and even attacking them. The Jewish underground's response was to have the vessels wait offshore until nightfall and then beach themselves as close as they could come to the shoreline, and the Jews would then jump off their ships and swim for shore. And so this first 60-year period of the modern-day Jewish return to the land of Israel, mainly by ships, ends in dramatic fashion with Jews being shipwrecked as close as they could get to shore and desperately swimming for their lives. And then in 1948, the nation of Israel was reborn. And as a sovereign state, Israel was able to welcome home as many Jews as it wanted. And it was about this time that the return of the Jews transitioned from coming by ships to coming by airplanes. And Isaiah 60 had said the ships of Tarshish will come first. And then it asks, who are these who fly like clouds, like doves to their nests? And over the past 60-some years, thousands and hundreds of thousands of Jews have arrived in Israel by airplane, most of them coming through Ben Gurion Airport, where we are today. The first major wave came after Israel won its independence in 1948. When the surrounding Arab and Muslim countries expelled all their Jewish communities. In that time, more than 800,000 Jews made their way back here to the land of Israel. Some came by foot, some by ship, but more and more they began arriving by plane. Another major wave came after the fall of Soviet communism in 1989, when more than 1 million Russian-speaking Jews from the former Soviet republics finally were free to come home to the land of Israel. Over recent decades, there have also been over 80,000 Jews from Ethiopia who have made it here. And in recent decades, there's been an increase of Jewish return from the West. as anti-Semitism has risen again in Europe, and Israel itself is thriving and began pulling Jews back here because the job opportunities are so much better. And one of the recent waves of returning Jews has come from India. The B'nai Menashe, who believe they're descended from the Israelite tribe of Manasseh. There's around 9,000 of them. Some have already arrived. There are more to come. The Christian Embassy has been sponsoring their flights, and we've had the privilege of welcoming hundreds and hundreds of them already here at Ben Gurion.